Hey viewers, my name's Cara. I'm your host for Tuesdays here on the Pagan Perspective, and this week we're talking about crystals. This week's topic will be in the description of my video as always, and it comes from Freedom Fighter, who asked, let's talk about how owning certain crystals has specifically changed your life. Why did you buy it in the first place, and did it serve the intended purpose? What's the most powerful or miraculous experience you've had with them? And how important are gemstones in your pagan practices? I want to talk about this because crystal websites have been sharing these incredible benefits of gemstones, and it's good if we who own it can validate to what they say. So, allowing a moment for all of that to sink in, I want to start with the end of that. It's good if those of us who own it can validate what these websites are saying. So firstly, the concept of ownership of any type of spiritual or a magical religious practice, I don't buy it. I don't believe that we own crystals or the practice of working with crystals. It's not an exclusively neo-pagan thing. It's not exclusively a witchy thing. I don't know who, if anyone, like human being wise, owns working with crystals. I would say, if anything, really, like, we'd have to go back to the geologists, like people who study rocks and minerals, because that's what these things are. And that's where we get a lot of the benefits that we then use in magic are based on the scientific properties. And I know that people in the science community tend to want nothing to do with things like crystal healing and energy work because they don't see it as a science. And I'm not saying that it is directly. What I'm saying is we tend to take the information about like what that mineral is and what effect that mineral has on the body, or what effect that element has on the body, the role it plays in the body. And then we use that to inform our spiritual and energetic practices utilizing that mineral. So yeah, I think if anyone were to say they own crystals, we'd have to go back to like the people who actually do the science about it, like geologists, rocks. Other than that, the earth owns the crystals, if we can really be that, about it right now. So no, I don't feel comfortable saying, I'm here on Pagan Perspective talking to you about crystals, because working with crystals in a neo-pagan practice is a pagan thing, and therefore as a pagan, I own this and I'm the one who can validate whether this is true or not. I don't think we own it. So moving on from there, how has owning certain crystals specifically changed our life? Did it serve the purpose? What's the most powerful or miraculous experience? So I would really have to know what websites you're looking at that are making really maybe outrageous claims talking about the incredible benefits of gemstones, because I've looked at a lot of crystal websites and I don't think that they claim to do anything miraculous. I don't know though. I'd have to go back and look. But generally when you're looking at like crystal websites to find out like what they're used for in magic, they'll talk about things like how in ancient Greece, amethyst was used to prevent intoxication, and that's part of how it got its name, and things like that, which we can then do ourselves today. We can copy that same practice wherever that knowledge came from, whatever historian uncovered that little fact that that's how these crystals were used in ancient cultures. We can then utilize it for the same purpose today. And I've done things like that for sure. So there are things that might say, use this crystal for relieving a headache, or, Use these crystals if you're nervous about public speaking because they will aid you in clarity and good communication and confidence in what you're saying. Things like this I have done and I use crystals for, and I believe that they are helpful in those endeavors. I don't consider any of those things particularly miraculous. I don't know if that's just the way that I view that word versus how other people view that word. I'm not sure. But so I realize that the questions being asked in this topic are because of the websites sharing incredible benefits and they want us to validate whether or not that's true. But I would really have to see, like, what are the claims being made? How owning certain crystals has specifically changed your life. I don't think my life has been changed simply through owning and working with crystals. I believe that certain aspects of my life in which I utilize working with crystals would be different. I'd have different coping mechanisms. I'd have different strategies for dealing with different things in my life if I didn't work with crystals. But I don't think that there's like any specific crystals that I would say like, oh, having this crystal changed my life. Possibly the ones that I feel like have had the most influence in how I handle things versus if I didn't own them, I would have to have different methods of doing these things or dealing with these situations would be my quartz friends. Clear quartz, smoky quartz, and rose quartz are probably three of the ones that I utilize the most often, just for practical things, helping me calm down so I can sleep, self-love work, grounding work, purifying and cleansing of energy, getting rid of negativity or toxic energies, and keeping around and amplifying good energies, directing energy, channeling energy, things like that, which I could find ways of doing all those things without crystals. So I think as far as how important are gemstones in my pagan practice, they're not the most important thing by any means. If I didn't have any crystals or if crystals weren't a thing that existed in the world, I could still do all of my magic for sure. There's nothing that relies solely on them. So in that sense, they're not like on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most important thing ever and 1 being not at all important. They're not a 10, because of that reason. But for me personally, like I said, because I do own and work with crystals, there are ways that I go about my practice that would be very different if I didn't have them. So as far as like how important are they to me, I really have to think of that in terms of like, how much do I enjoy them? How much do I enjoy working with them? Because I don't feel that it would be necessary, no. But I would say like on a day-to-day basis, thinking of like, how do I practice and what do I use in my practice? Crystals would be somewhere around like a 6 to 7 on that scale of 1 to 10. I really enjoy them. And this was not actually planned, but this past weekend, I was supposed to do a video for my personal channel because I try to do one every weekend-ish. And I was thinking, like, I've been talking a lot about books and like just chatty topics on my personal channel lately. So I was like, I could still talk about books and like what I'm studying, but I want to kind of get away from that, take a little break. So I want to talk about something a little more practical and tangible. So I was thinking I want to talk about like plants because it's springtime, or I want to talk about crystals because I hadn't made a video yet showing my new crystal storage and display box that my partner got for me last year for my birthday. So I decided to do my video about crystals, and I didn't end up recording it until yesterday, and then because of some technical difficulties, I wasn't able to make it public until this morning, Tuesday morning. So by the time you're seeing this, that video is already up on my channel. And then after I recorded that video and got it started uploading and everything like that, I checked the collab topics document so that I could start mentally preparing for what the video was going to be today. And this week is crystals. So I didn't actually plan that. I had forgotten that this week on Pagan Perspective was about crystals, but apparently it's the time for me to talk about that. So by the time you're seeing this, there's also a video on my channel where I show you a bunch of my crystal collection. So you can go watch that and hear a little bit more. I talk about my rose quartz and my smoky quartz and stuff like that. But yeah, the next question in this topic was, why did you buy it in the first place, and did it serve the intended purpose? And as you'll also see if you go watch that video on my personal channel, I talk a lot about how I didn't buy most of my crystals. Most of them were given to me, either as gifts by friends, and some viewers that I've met over the years have given me little crystals. I have a rock from Australia that Brendan gave me when we met at witch camp. Brendan, one of our former members here on Pagan Perspective. So yeah, I like rocks. I like rocks and crystals and stuff, and I think that they are really good for a lot of different things, but I didn't buy most of the ones I have. So you'll see, like, even the ones I show in the video are not my entire crystal collection, but it's quite a lot, and I would I would by no means have nearly that many if I actually had bought them all myself. It was more like over decades of time, my mom buying crystals and people giving me crystals, and then a few of them I obtained myself. So yeah, just keep that in mind when you see how many I have. But yeah, so I didn't obtain my crystals like with a specific intention, like, oh, I have this problem in my life, therefore I need to go buy this crystal. That's not what I get them for. I don't get them for solving specific problems. I don't get them as a miracle cure. I get them because I like them. And I think that working with crystals and learning about them and how they can be used energetically is fascinating. And I think it's fun. And I think it's useful if that's how your mind works, and if you're the kind of person who just adamantly thinks like it's a rock, I don't care how pretty it is, it's not going to do anything for me, then crystals probably aren't for you. And that's fine. I happen to love them, and I always have, and so did my mom. So I grew up in a house just surrounded by crystals, and I just like them. And so some people have vast crystal collections and work with all of them regularly. Some people have a few that they work with or don't. Some people might just have crystals in the form of jewelry that you wear because of the specific energetic resonance that stone or mineral or even just that color of crystal has and can be of benefit in your life. Or some people might just have a crystal as the tip of their wand. That's another very popular or common use, I would say, in the magic community, is to have, if you have a wand that you work with, to have it tipped with a crystal, or maybe crystals embedded in it or whatever. But again, if you're not really into crystals, then your wand might not have crystals. Again, if you even have a wand. But yeah. So the most powerful and miraculous experience I've had with them, I just feel like that's a really overblown way of looking at it. I wouldn't say I've ever had a miraculous experience with them. I guess you could say the most powerful experience I've ever had with a crystal was in a ritual with a number of other people, and someone had brought a giant quartz, like literally it was this big around, and you could like hold it like a baby. It was heavy, probably heavier than a baby, but basically, yeah, you just like, it was huge. You like wrap your arms around it. And they had taken it somewhere, I think they said, like they had taken it to the Women's March in DC or something like that, and charged it with that energy, and then brought it to this ritual and passed it around so everyone could, feel it and like tap into that energy. And I feel like experiences like that are really powerful because they're drawing on the ability of certain crystals, or crystals in general, to store energy, but specifically because this was a clear quartz, they're very good for storing and then directing energy, or being a conduit of energy. And so things like that I think are really cool, where someone has actually charged something with a specific type of energy, and then they allow you to come in contact with it and tap into that and feel that. I've also been part of a ritual that used a spherical crystal made of a grounding stone. I believe it was red jasper, but I could be mistaken. It was red though. It was something related to the root chakra or the base chakra, and really grounding and earthy energy. And we used it in a ritual to, how do I want to word this? Basically like a cleansing and releasing ritual. And so everybody passed it around the circle, and you put your energy into it that we wanted to release, and then we collectively released the energy using the crystal. So I guess I would say the most powerful experiences I've had with crystals were also those that were had in community, where multiple people were working with the same crystal and using it to store energy, to transmute energy from negative into positive, using it to heal, things like that. Because I use crystals for things like that in my own life, but when I think of like the really standout, like what are the most powerful experiences I've ever had with crystals, it would probably be those ones that were had in community. And then I already answered the other thing, how important are gemstones in your pagan practice? So yeah, I can't really say whether those websites are blowing things out of proportion or not. I just think like, even if a website says something like, I can't even think of something like that I think would be ridiculous, but that a crystal website would actually say. Because like, I've never seen crystal websites claim really outlandish things. Like one of the really common examples that we use when talking about like what magic can and can't do, or what you shouldn't leave up to magic, is like, if you break your arm or you break your leg, you should see a doctor. You can't use crystals to set your broken bone, basically, kind of thing. Although some really experienced people may be able to do that, that's not generally what they're for. That's not generally how we are using them as a community. But even if a website said stuff like that, I just know like that's not what they're for in my life. So the things that websites would say that I think like, oh, that sounds really helpful, I'm going to try to use that, are things like if specific cultures had used them for worship, or if they were associated with a specific deity, if they have been used to treat various things that I experience in my life, like anxiety, depression, stage fright, insomnia, something that I've been dealing with for quite a while. Generally like, oh, this is used for calming, and this is used for increasing your ability to effectively communicate. Things like that I buy into, and I use crystals for things like that, and I have had good results. So things like that, I guess you could say my experience validates, but your mileage may vary. You're not me, we're all different people, and every crystal is different, the energies are different. In some ways they are the same, and we can use multiple different types of crystals for the same basic things, sure, but it ultimately comes down to us and how we use them or don't use them. Because again, I could do any of those things in my life that I use crystals for without them. If they didn't exist, or if they ceased to exist, I could still find ways to do those things. I would just have to alter the way I do it, because I use crystals as tools. So yeah, that's my crystal story. I will link my crystal video on my personal channel here in the end screen, as well as probably my most recent video here from Pagan Perspective. And then you can subscribe to Pagan Perspective and my personal channel, and let us know your favorite crystals and stuff like that. Anything you want to talk about crystals in the comments. I will see you next time. Until then, don't forget to be awesome, blessed be, and goodbye. Thanks for watching.